So, a couple things that I want to go over is console logs are your friend. You would always want to console log something because you want to see. It's like put statements, and it's a very common form and one of the primary forms of debugging in your JavaScript. And what's cool is you can add certain flair to it. So if we refresh, you see this right here. So this right here is just a console log. If you put %C, you're saying that they will add some sort of CSS to this. The next parameter will be the key value pair for your CSS. So like if I want to change this to, there's a bunch of cool ones you can kind of like look up, like brick red. Oh, just kidding. That didn't work. That didn't work. Is it brick red? All right, that was embarrassing. What's another weird one? Goldenrod? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Different, right? I swear brick red was a real one. Brick red? That's not gonna work. All right. I personally like purple, and it allows you to. Well, that's because the lighting. All right. When you're debugging on your computer, it'll be fine. When you're debugging, you're going to have so many console logs that it helps to color code them so you can see which one's which in what order, and that's very useful. So this is just a cool tip. If you wanted to get sneaky, you can do console warn, and you will see the warning. And you can force errors by going cool, powerful. So there you go. Also, we talked a little bit about dir, which is going to show you the properties of something, and we will use that later today. So here's what I want to do. Here's the feature set, and here's where I start. I see your question. Here's where I start to see and talk about process. I hinted at it, and I kind of focused a little bit, not as hard as I needed to, about step by step, thinking through something, and then implementing a brand new feature, something that you might not feel comfortable doing, and then writing out the steps that you need in a very logical order, and then everything you don't know how to do, step by step, individually Googling, and then you'll see, like, in fact, you know how to learn, you know how to read, and you know how to make something happen. So the first thing I want to do is I'm on this website, and my boss comes in and goes, hey, Evans, I've got like 10 pictures. I need you to add these pictures to this website. I need you to display them on the website. Who feels comfortable or knows how to do that right now? Right? Some of you. Cool. So for those that don't, what is the steps that you actually need to go through, just in plain English, right? Like, what do you really need when it really breaks down about how to kind of do this? So first thing is, I need those pics, right? Pictures, actually, it kind of sounded like a little sketch, right? Like 70 pics. I need those pictures of memes, all right? Just so we're absolutely clear. So you need the pictures of the memes, right? Here, I have provided them for you. It's just an array of dank memes. Cool? Cool. All right, so I need some sort of picture, right? What else do you need? Okay, the page to put them on. Cool. So let's take a look. Let's think through what is the page I want to put them on. All right, probably this page, right? This is the page, but where's the HTML for this page? It's right here. This is the HTML for it, right? So this is what I want to do. Okay, so I need to find the picture I need the page to put them on, right? So this is the HTML. Cool. What else? Okay, function. Okay, so allow me to help you out with this since this is the first time and it gets easier and easier, but you probably want to hear it first. Before we get started, I said that I saw your question. So somebody had a question?
Oh, yeah. After.
Okay, sure. Okay. No, it's fine. Like, I'm here. All right, so you need to know where the pictures are, right? So you actually have the picture itself. And so let's take a look at one of these dank memes. Bloop. Cool. Yes. I'm here like 99% of the time. I don't know about you guys, but I'm on the right often. So, cool, this picture exists. I got it. The next thing is I need to know where I'm going to put them. But more specifically, where on the page I want to put them. So do I want to put them right here? Do I want to put them on this child? Or do I want to put it on this add images here? That one, right? So on the HTML, I need to figure out, right? I need to figure out specifically where on the page I want to add them. And then I need to figure out how I grab that part, right? So I need to be able to control the element I want to add pictures to, right? So like if there's like a painting and I want to add something like in this corner, I need to grab the div or the span or the p tag, whatever's here, I need to control it. And then I need to like do something like add image to this div that's in this corner versus a div that's on that corner. Does that make sense? I need to control that element. And then I will probably have to look up, all right? So once I'm in control of the element, right, look up how to add a image to an element that I'm controlling. That's like the steps really, right? Like, cool, I see a page, I want it on this particular div, I need to grab and control the div, I need to take the image, and I need to add it to the div somehow. And I'm done, that's the whole feature. So that's the process I'm talking about. If you can do that process, you can do anything in JavaScript. That's really about it, because every one of those pieces there becomes Googleable. As opposed to like, how do I add a picture? You'll probably find a good article, but more complicated features, you'll need to break that down. And that's really it. It's just good logic. So before we kind of get into implementing this, there's some information I need to like teach you guys. Bloop. Cool. So let's talk about the DOM. Bloop. Bloop, 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 bloop. Is that better? Cool. Can you guys see in the back? Awesome. Do you guys want to kill the lights, or are we fine?
Kill the sun.
Kill the sun. Kill the light?
Wait, let's do one thing at a time. Test.
Plus, plus. So is it Bob or is it the light?
You can turn off.
Darker.
It's Bob. Has anyone heard of this? Bob? Like the big orange ball? Alright. Yeah. It's not supposed to be funny, all right? So no laugh. No. It's an armyism. Like you get up every morning at like 4 or 5 in the morning and like you like run and then you see the sunrise, like, oh look, it's Bob. And for a long time I was like, who is this guy? And like, oh, it's the sun. It's big orange balls. Like, I feel like an idiot. So when you laughed, if you were laughing at me.
Oh, wow, nice job.
Yeah, wow.
You are sunshine. Bob was laughing at you because you didn't know who he was.
Clowns. All right. So let's talk about DOM, right? So what does the DOM stand for? Very good. So the document object model, and I will explain each one of these things. The document just refers to like all of the HTML. The object means that if I can convert all the HTML into one object, then I can use JavaScript to grab and control the individual items. All right, so here we have index.html. This is all the HTML written in code on lines. I cannot use JavaScript to intercept this HTML file. However, when I send this HTML from the server to the client receives it, Chrome then does something to it. And that is it takes each one of these. It will go, great, here's a div, cool. I'm gonna add it to the object. Here's another div, cool, I'm gonna add it to the object. It takes each one of these things and turns it into one big object. JavaScript can then interact with that object. I just want, thank you. Yes or no? All right. And then the model is basically just referring to like this is what it looks like. This is the view. Cool? The DOM, question? Oh, just snarky remark.
We're talking about you said weed, like yes.
Oh, wheat?
Yep. Like weed, French.
Oh, we. Oh, dude, I was just in Montreal. I should have understood that. Yeah, that's my fault. All right, but we're back in the States. All right, so the DOM is a tree. The DOM is a tree. So what does that mean? In computer science, a tree, this is a new type of data structure that you haven't really had a lot of interaction with, if any at all. And it looks just like this. Unfortunately, it's like an upside down tree. So this is actually correct, this rendering. And that's basically what it means, right? You have one central top node. And all that means is that it can branch off. Here we have what looks like a binary tree. And all that means is each node can have at most how many?
2.
Binary, right? But when it comes to the DOM, it's not a binary tree. It can have as many nodes as possible, meaning like this 2 can actually split into 7, 5, and 14, and 27, and 93. And those are just the names of the numbers of those nodes. Cool? So it's just a new type of data structure that is not a string, an array, a hash, a queue, a stack. It's a new type. Cool? So in comparison, this is what it looks like. All right? You have node number 2 sort of representing the body, and then it goes into a div. And then that div can have what are known as child node elements. So for example, let's say 7 is the div. How many children does 7 have? 2. 2 and 6. So this div has how many children? The H1, the P, and the UL tag. So each one of these are HTML tags, an H1, a P, and a UL. But if referencing them as the object, the tree object, these are also known as nodes. Does that make sense? Like if I call this the H1 tag, or I said, can you grab that node, this node, they're almost interchangeable in the way they're referenced, but they're referencing different things based on whether or not you're talking about the tree or if you're talking about the actual element from HTML itself. So you will hear them, often incorrectly, used interchangeably, but that is the difference. Okay, cool. Great. So there's a couple things that we'll need to know terminology-wise. In this div, we've talked about the fact that this div has 3 child elements. This H1 tag, having never heard this term before, you can probably infer, has how many siblings?
2.
And where are they? In the UL. What about this li tag? How many siblings does the li tag have?
1.
Right? So this emphasis tag is not actually a sibling. Does that make sense? So if I were to ask the li for a parent element, what would it return me? The ul. So it's pretty easy terminology here, right? It looks visually simple to understand, especially when it's broken down like this. The problem is when it looks like this, you're like, all right, cool. How many children does this outer node have?
1. 2.
It's this div right here, semantic, and then it's what else? Span. Becomes harder to see, which is why if you do not indent your code already, painful, which is why I wasn't being a douche canoe yesterday when I said, if you came to me and like, I don't understand why this works and it wasn't indented, I'd be like, fix that indentation, come back. Because you can already see how painful it is, right? So this is just writing good code. So one of the pro tips I will tell you is, if you're using Atom or Sublime, you can hit Command, comma, and then I believe under editor, you can have, yes, show indentation guide. Check that. And if you do, you will start to see these powerful lines come down, and you could start to see indentation and the children elements very quickly. Because if I'm looking at the children elements of this, how many times should everything be indented? So I see this is indented once. I can see very easily this is where it ends. This is also on that same line, and this is where it ends, and then this is where that main div ends. So 2 elements, 2 children. Is that helpful?
Yes.
Cool. So, boom, boom, boom.
What was the command to get to that page?
Command comma, or you just go to settings. So Atom preferences. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is sort of like how to select each one of these DOM nodes. And so if you remember, one of the first things we talked about, I need to get rid of this mini map. Cool. All right, so if you remember, one of the first things we talked about was, great, we need those pictures. That was easy. That's almost always given. Or you can upload it yourself, whatever. We know what page it wants to be on. This particular one is going to be on index.html. Where on the page I want them is very important. As we talked about on the HTML, we want it here. Add images here. This is where we want it. The next thing is I need to control the element that I want to add the picture. So here, this seems to be the element, this div, with the ID of container. And then I need to basically look up how to add it. So with the image, with this ID of container, what I can do is, all right, so boom, this is given or upload yourself, right? The page to put them on. We've identified, right, index.html. Here we can add it on any different type of page. So like if you remember back on Rails, it could be the show page, the index page, like any view page you want. You have to identify which one it is. Here we have one view because I'm just giving you an example. Where on the page you want to add them, right? Okay, div with the ID equal to container. This is the one we want to add. And now we need to control the element. How do we get JavaScript to control that element? So if we go back to the README, there's a lot we can do. All right. Again, these READMEs are like, put a lot of effort in. Please just browse them for my humor. I put a cheat sheet on the bottom for you. There's a couple ways. There's document.getElementById, which so aptly named. What do you think this does? Great. I'm not going to read the rest to you, but I will tell you the kind of differences. What does it return you? So you start to really think through about the type of object it returns when you do it. Do you remember that when we did bcrypt? This is the nice thing about like jumping from one mod to the next, as I taught you. When we did bcrypt.new, what object was that? An instance of bcrypt, right? It's a bcrypt object. So you always want to check the class, because if you know what the class is, then you know what method you can run on it. So here it returns a single element. And that's an element, and that will be something that you can run element methods on. Here, if you get all the elements by a particular class name, it returns a HTML collection. So HTML collection, is that the same as array?
The same as
Array.
perhaps options, array of options. I think so. Yes.
If I did HTML collection triple equals array, what would I get?
False.
False. So is HTML collection an array?
No.
Absolutely not. Do you think I can automatically do something like dot for each on an HTML collection?
No.
Exactly. So just be careful, right? Remember the type of object you're working with. If I do query selector, it returns a single element, which is an element, and then query selector all allows me it returns a collection, and this is a node list. A node list is also not an array. However, if I go to the references in the documentation, it pulls in from the array prototype. So it will allow a for each. So this is kind of like how you got to start thinking through a lot of these things. Like, what does it return? What can I do with that return object? This is like the next steps in your JavaScript skills. So here, let's go pretty simple. Let's just get the element by ID because we know it has an ID, and I can grab it. Bloop. Let's take a look. This is the HTML. Right? And this is the div that we want. I can look at this code here and see get element by ID. It already has ID in the name. So I do not need to do something like this, specifying that it's an ID. So do you remember the CSS selectors where like the hashtag grabs what? The ID. And then the dot grabs the, okay. So because I've already specified ID right here, I don't actually have to specify ID again. So what is the name of this thing? And let's see what it returns. This right here. And you can even see Chrome helps you out. If I highlight over it, it tells you what I'm grabbing. It's very helpful. Powerful. Cool. So I can actually store this into a variable, like a const, and that's going to be image container equals to this. All right? Now that I have this image container, which is, again, that div, I can ask it for all of its properties. Bloop. Look at this. Wow. Child nodes. There's a text, a p tag, another text. Right? What else is there? There's a children. And how many children does it have? A p tag, right? Cool. There's just all this information here, right? Like, what is the inner text of that item? Like, it's all there. So I know that I have reference to it. So this is the inner text. This is a property of this container. So can I do image container dot inner text? I can reassign it. Yee. Wow. And so that's how you can look for and reference things. Or you just search for it on MDN or on Google. Like, hey, how do I change the text of a div? That would be what I would Google. And that's basically what it would say. Like, hey, great. A method on a div has something called inner text. And then you just assign it to be whatever you want. And then that's how you're starting to think through these things. So now that I have this image, right, let's do it. Add image to div, JavaScript. var image, you have to make a new image object. You have to get the element. This is like an onload, that's not important. And then you can change the source of the image. So let's do this. Looks like I can just create a new element. So document dot, look at all this. Wow. It really helps you out here. So this is the one we want. I'm going to create an element. The element I want to create is, do I want a p tag for an image, an a tag for an image, or an image tag for an image? Cool. And I'm just going to put const image tag equals to this. So now my image tag is just a blank empty image. How do I specify what that image is? All right. Image tag. What is this? Cool. Is there a way I can mess with the source? Well, let's check. I'm looking for something that possibly can reference source. So if I said image.source is equal to some URL, what should I get? Well, oh, you're right. Embarrassing. Well, thank you for reading the error and fixing it. That's like a really good skill. Bloop. So it says that like, hey, I couldn't find it. This is exactly what it tried to do. Get some URL. So if I look at image tag again, I see that is in fact what happened. Can I change that to something that I know exists?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Can you guys figure out the rest of this over here? I just grab one of these. Bad Johnson's over here. Actually, you know what? Let me grab this one. Let me grab this one. This one's money. Don't worry about it. It's gonna be okay. Don't worry. Don't worry. All right, let's do something first. What was the image container? Let's change the inner text to. So there's a point, a bunch of memes where it was like the Netflix adaptation, and it was like this live action with like really poor cosplay. So Rugrats live Netflix adaptation. All right, cool. This is what we're gonna do. We're gonna take the image tag, we're gonna change the source, and we're gonna make it equal to this really sketch picture. All right. I really should check that before I put it on the recording. Risk it. YOLO.
You already did our service.
All right. Oh, you did the surveys already? So you're good. Well, I'm good. I'm good. You're locked in. So what I want to do is I want to add this image to the image container. Does anyone know how to do it? Me neither. Image tag to a div. That's basically what I'm trying to do. How do I add an image element to a div with JavaScript? Okay. 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 Something like append child. Okay. Weird. Never seen that before. Append child JavaScript. This is basically what developers do. Okay, there's some sort of DOM append child. Look, MDN can't go wrong. Let's just figure out what this is. Okay, it adds a node to the end to the list of children. I can take an element like a div and literally run something called append child with the child element that I want. Okay, let's try it. So, bloop, bloop, bloop. Wow, look at this code block. I can create an image, an element, and then immediately append the child. So it looks to me like I can take the image container and run something called append child. And I can add in the image tag. Whoa! Powerful. Powerful. So this is me and my brother, and we were at like one of these like, you guys seen like Wipeout, where it's like an obstacle course race where you like get punched around for no reason? For those that don't recognize the show, it's called Rugrats, and we are a very recognizable character, hopefully.
Were you on the team?
You guys did that obstacle.
We did obstacle course. We were not on any TV show, but if anyone is interested, you know, we are available. You can tweet me at nothing. So, yeah, look at this. Rock, paper, scissors. I won, so I was Lil. Either way, the point is, let's go back to this JavaScript. Let's figure out if we could do something like image container dot remove image. All right, let's just go right back to the lesson. So the idea here is that this is just the process, right? So control the element that I want the picture. And how did we grab the element that we wanted? Oh, now you're quiet, right? Okay. Oh! So document dot get element by ID, and then we have to get the element first, and that was based on the index, right? It was container. So let me not blow your mind, but I'll open your mind to the possibilities. If you were given a div like this, which is very often, and your boss came up to you and was like, hey, I need you to add a bunch of these images to this div. And you'd be like, well, I can't. There's no ID on it. This is what he or she will do. Do you know how to add an ID to a div? Yes. Okay, great. And then you just do this. Bloop, 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 bloop. And then that's it. You just get element by ID, bloop, and then you're fine, right? So the idea is that you are the full stack developer. You are in complete control of both the HTML, the JavaScript, eventually the server, the backend, which I will teach you on Friday. But yeah, if you want to add something and it's not there, add it. Like it's on you. It's so crazy that it is hard to get past that because you're like, oh man, I don't have it. God, it's right here. And you can add anything you want, so you're in complete control, and it's beautiful because now you're the developer. And so, yeah, so just do whatever you want. So if I give you a lab that's like, hey, add a bunch of images to this like nested p tag or something, you're gonna be like, oh, I don't know how to do that. Just like, but it's okay, right? Like it's steps, and then the power is a lot to wield at once. Right, so look, we got the element, right? And then we store into a variable. So how we did that was just a const of like image container equal to this. So far, so good. Actually, this is the code we want. Boop. Right? And then now I need to look up how to add an element. So we found something. Found append child. All right. Then we looked up how to use the method append child. And then finally, we did something like, I'm not going to actually write that code. Bloop. But is there something we're missing here? Yeah. So the first thing we need to do is actually create an image tag to add the images to. And that was through document.createElement. And we want to create an image tag. We wanted to, I see, one second, add the source for the image. And that was simply with what? Image tag what? Yeah. And then this is going to be source of the image. And then all I did was add it. Oops. All I did was add it. So logically speaking, if you can just do the process, you can look it up. The rest of the code will just follow. It's not hard. It's just, can I think through how I'm going to do it? So it's been about, I guess, 30-something minutes. Who feels more comfortable about how to add an image to a page? Okay. Versus like earlier, like 30 minutes ago, you're like, I've never seen that, I don't know how. Do you see the possibility that you can implement a feature on your own, a new feature you've never seen, based on your own ability to kind of Google and look up and your own trust in self that you know how to learn how to learn? That's the only skill I can really teach you. Languages and frameworks will come and go. But you will sustain yourself as a developer if you can read documentation and trust in your own learning. Imposter syndrome will come. Happens all the time. Like literally at the bachelor party, in the 7-hour drive back, I was like, man, I don't know if I'm ready to teach JavaScript. So here I am, you know. You got to get over it, and you have to talk to other people, and they'll reassure you, you know. And you're in a good place.
The method that says get element by ID. Can you put dot container
Get element by ID dot container.
for IDs?
It's actually the hash for IDs. It's the dot for classes. But because this is specific to an ID, I don't actually have to add the hash here. That being said, there are multiple ways. And I gave you a powerful cheat sheet. So let's take a look at that README. Actually, it's better if we do the preview. Okay, that didn't work out. So there's get element by ID, there's get elements by class name, then there's something called the query selector. So what we can do is, let's take a look at the HTML, and you tell me how to write it. If I wanted to get this internet memes, right, or maybe this semantic container, using document.querySelector, What's the first thing you would think about trying to do if you did not know how to use it?
MDM.
Yeah, I'd look it up on NDM, like query selector MDN. I will tell you, it will tell you to use the CSS selectors, which include the dot and the hash, or just the tag name itself. So I can use query selector, and if I wanted the h1 tag, I would just pass in h1. If I wanted a class of semantic, how would I do that? How would I do that? I put in the class, semantic, and there it is. If I have multiple, right, I have like 4 h1 tags, what do you think query selector will do?
Find the first one.
It would just return the first one. Now there's also query selector all, which would, there it is. There are 2 divs with the class semantic. And so it will in fact return a node list. Are there any questions on like this query selector versus query selector all? You had a question, then you had a question.
Why you have to use the dot class
If you what?
the document query selector?
Mm-hmm.
You have to use dot or hash.
Yes, so query selector is different from get element by ID. I don't have to use the hash for that because it's already specifying ID.
Got it, okay.
Query selector though, it's just like, hey, give me an element that, and that's the end of the sentence. And then you have to tell it class of semantic, right? Or just the tag h1. Or I can do query selector and ask for the anything with an ID of container.
So let's just say I forgot which symbols stood for class or ID. Can I literally write out class equals, or ID equals container and still work?
Like this, ID equals container?
Yeah.
No. You'll have to, unfortunately, memorize hashtag ID dot class. That's all. It's not, I mean, even if you forget, query selector ID. And then if it doesn't come up, I would be surprised. Your question.
This JavaScript file, what was it normally called and what folder or project is it
The JavaScript, okay.
We're writing JavaScript.
So typically your main page will be the index page, and then you'll have like a JavaScript folder, like how you saw in Rails, and then multiple JavaScript files according to what it will do.
Is it normal, like, practice to name them the same with a different file?
What was the question?
Like, they're both called index, and the only difference is .xml and .js.
The JavaScript will typically match up to the page that you want it to work on. For vanilla JavaScript, sometimes that can be overkill, right? Like if I have like a show page that has like 2 lines of JavaScript on it, yes, it's well organized, but at the same time, it kind of becomes a lot. So there's 2 ways to handle that. So does everyone understand the question? Okay. There's 2 ways to handle it. Either you can keep that for organization's sake, and then you can run something called bundle, which will take everything and then minify it, remove all the extra spaces, the white space, add your extra semicolons in there for you. Oh, there it is. Thank you. It only took 1. Anyways, it's a Miyagi that thing. And in which case it will bundle, so it'll take all of your JavaScript files, bundle it into 1 file, ready for production. So you would have multiple files for organization in development, so it's easier. Or you can have like a few main files that separate by what it does. So you can have one that like declares all the variables. You can have one that like does like the functions, You can separate it that way. It will be up to you, but more importantly, it will be up to the senior developer on the team, and then you'll just fall in. So there's a lot of ways to handle it. Rails is very specific. It's like, great, you put it in the controller file, and you name it pluralized controller. In JavaScript, it's like, hey man, if it works, it works. You know? And so this is when you'll first start to see the problem with the, I forgot what it's called, but it's like the paradox of choice. It's like if you have too many options, you don't know what to do, and you wind up doing nothing.
Option paralysis.
Option paralysis, yeah. Costco does a good thing on it. But either way, the point is, for right now, you won't really have to know about scaling out, and it's going to be okay. For right now, put everything in one file, and you will learn patterns that make sense to you in your head about how to extract them into separate files. But until you get good, just put it in one file. And that is not best practice. That's best practice for learning at this moment. A good question. Is there anything else about understanding the DOM? If I say the DOM is a tree, if I say the DOM is an object, grabbing elements, looking up methods, manipulating the DOM, meaning I literally added something and changed the DOM. It does not persist because remember, when I do that new GET request, what comes back? This HTML comes back. So if I refresh, add images here, it's just those images. I mean, it's just from the HTML and not from what I wrote and changed on it. So it's actually really funny, and I'll leave you with this. I sometimes tell friends when I'm a developer and they don't believe me, I like go in and I do this bad boy over here. You guys ever do this? You just like mess around. So like you grab this and then you go, and then you change this image as source. And it's like one time during the Olympics, I changed the headline to like Evans Wang wins gold in like a 400 meter. And like I replaced Usain Bolt. It's just a picture of me crossing a finish line like this. I screenshot it and sent it to all my friends. And now you have that power. So if there's no other questions on like the DOM, understanding the DOM, and being able to manipulate it, looking up methods, referencing the MDN, asking good questions, and having a good process. I need this. Then with that, I'm going to do that with it. And then with that, I'm going to do this with it. And then with this, I'm going to do another to that with it, and understanding the logical order, and then the code will come. If in your mind it's clear what you need to do, the code will come. Or at least you can look it up or ask better questions to Google, or me, or Chris, or Veer, or Veer too.
So, question about the relationship between the HTML and the JavaScript file. So, the
Yes.
content of the HTML file, it just loads everything in.
Got it. The question, yeah.
But how does it know when to look into the JavaScript file and start doing features with it?
Very good. So the question is like, how does this HTML file know and load in the proper JavaScript file, right? So here, typically what you'll see is inside the head tag, there'll be something looks like this. And then you can reference a JavaScript file. Here I've wrote it on the bottom. And that's where it's importing. So it's important where it imports in the same way that mod 1 was important where you required the file. So here, the script tag is where in relation to the rest of the HTML.
Where you want inside that.
The top or the bottom.
Well,
Therefore, when this script tag loads, does it have the HTML in memory? Yes. If, however, if you take a look and think about it, if I put it here, is there any HTML available when this script tag executes? So if my script is here and I run document.querySelector on an outer node div, what will return? I believe it's undefined. It means nothing came back. Does that make sense? So what you can do is a couple things. You can either have this defer and wait till it loads. You can run an event, which we'll talk about later, that waits till the DOM loads before the JavaScript, or you can move it to the bottom. And order matters, right? So for example, if I were to use dank memes inside index, will I have it?
Yes.
Yes. What about now?
No.
Cool.
I just want to know what the best practice was.
There is no specific best practice, and you will hear that, unfortunately, a lot in JavaScript. So that's what you have to get out of the mindset of in terms of like, what is the right way? And the right way is the one that makes sense to you, that works. Did I answer your question, by the way?
Yes.
Is there any time you want it on the top, like when you want the JavaScript to make the HTML for you?
There are very common practices, but nothing is necessarily the best. And what I see very often is all the script tags are loaded inside the head. And then you will either defer them or you will set certain parameters for your JavaScript to wait until the DOM loads. When it comes to React, it's an entirely different beast on how it works, but this is vanilla JavaScript. Good questions. Anything else? That's all I have for you today.